こんにちは、岡田先生です。今日は日本語3の2課の文法を勉強しましょう。文法ノートにノートを取ってください。一番最初にする時間の勉強をします。So, this has to do with when you do something. You use the stem form of all 動詞 before 始める、終わる、続ける. And as you know, 始める means to begin, 終わる means to finish or end, and 続ける is to continue, 続ける. So, 始める, if you use the stem form before it, it means I will begin doing something. And then stem form 終わります means I will finish doing something. And if I say stem form 続けます, I will continue to do something. So 例に私は勉強を始めます。勉強をし始めます。I will begin doing homework or begin doing the studying. Or 私は勉強をし終わります。I will finish studying. Or 私は勉強をし続けます。I will continue studying. Because remember, the verb is 勉強をします。stem form ね。Or I can say 本を読み始めます。begin reading. 私は本を読み終わります。Or in this case, you can say 読み終えます because we use the transitive form. Or we can say 私は本を読み続けます. I will continue to read. We can say 映画を見始めます meaning I will begin reading. Or 私は映画を見終わりました I finished watching the movie. Or 私は映画を見続けます I will continue to watch the movie. 次に同じように stem form をまた使います。So this is another form using the stem form. And this is for 簡単と難しい or 優しい versus 難しい things to do. So if we say something にくい versus something 安い, にくい is something that is difficult to do. And then stem form 安い would be easy to do. So, 例に I have these two kanji down here. Two kanji. They are both B. Kanji for B. 音読みは B です。And we can say that this one is more difficult to write than this one. So この漢字は書きにくいです。この漢字は書きやすいです。We can also say that one is easier to read than the other. So we can say これは書きにくいです。ごめん。読みにくいです。versus これは読みやすいです。So これは難しいです。これはやりやすいです。これは簡単です。And then we also have 3 more examples I'm going to give you. じゃあね、スープはスプーンでスープは食べやすいです。でも、スープはフォークで食べにくいです。サボテン、cactus。サボテンに座るのは座りにくいです。サボテンの椅子は座りにくいです。Very difficult to sit on a cactus chair. 携帯電話。携帯電話、cell phone, スマホ。So we were gonna say 携帯電話で映画を見るのは見にくいです。見にくいです。映画は見にくいです。携帯電話で映画を見るのは見にくいです。でも、その代わり、友達と話すのは話しやすいです。携帯電話で話すのは話しやすいです。 次はリストを作りましょう。The last unit we had a list as well using ya and toka. In this case, we're making another list, and there is an emphasis for this one in emphasizing the speaker, the one who's speaking, that would be you, your desire to talk about something that to emphasize that there was more than one thing that has occurred or is being described. It follows a tense's plain forms rules that we have before. I have them really small on this side. It's from the previous video, so if you need to review those notes again, please make sure that those notes are very clearly delineated in your notes and you have it highlighted and tagged so you can review back over them because you know how important it is for you to know the plain forms rules. So it follows the plain form rules, and you would use them in the she form, plain form she, plain form she. And your final thoughts at the very end usually is a summary of your thoughts. Not always. It is very much like you would use all the plain forms before she. It's a little bit different than using yeah, because there is, and it is very much close to using as the te form as well. So let me give you some examples. 例に今日すること. Obviously, since it's 今日, I'm going to be using the present tense and 学校に行くし、先生と話すし、勉強をするし、本を読むし、母とケーキを作るし、楽しいと思います。So notice how I listed all the things I'm going to do, and then after my last she, I kind of wrapped it up with my thoughts of what the day will be like. I think it'll be fun. 楽しいと思います。じゃあね、the second one, let me give you another example. 昨日したこと. So obviously I'm talking about 昨日, so it's going to be in the past tense. So plain form past tense, remember, would be 他 form. So I can say 昨日私は友達と話したし、夕飯を作ったし、家の掃除をしたし、自転車に乗ったし、大変でした。So again, yesterday I did all those things, and then at the very end, after the she, I kind of wrapped it up with 大変でした. It was a very difficult day, or it was a day that was filled with a lot of activities. So remember, she is used in order to emphasize your desire to indicate that more than one thing occurred. And then the very end is kind of a final thoughts or summary of your thoughts of what had happened or what is going to happen. Now I can use it in order to describe something as well. So 最後の例に友達のことについて if I'm talking about my friend, I might say 友達は女の子だし、先生の友達だし、可愛いし、頭がいいし、みかんが好きだし、猫も好きだし、背が高いし、楽しい人です。So again, I described my tomodachi, and then at the very end, I wrapped it up by saying that she's a fun person. So again, you're going to list your attributes with the plain form, and then end it with wrapping it up with your final thoughts or summary of your thoughts. Now, just like in kara, using the kara form that you learned in Nihongo Ichi, you can do, obviously, in the very formal form, you don't have to use a plain form. You can use the full form. So, for example, for the first one, 今日すること, I can say, instead of saying 私は勉強をするし, instead of saying that, I can say 私は今日勉強をしますし, ケーキを作りますし. So in the very formal form, I would basically use the formal forms, the decimas form. I don't have to change it into the plain form because it still makes sense. Okay. Then we get into, speaking of kara, we get into node and noni. Now, node and noni is used just like we would with dakara and dakedo. So, dakara would be so, therefore, because, since it is the cause node effect. And interestingly enough, noni also uses cause noni effect, but there is a difference between the two. Now, underneath, it is the plain form goes before node, and the plain form goes before noni. There are some irregular ones, the adjective and the noun. Before the no, it just sounds weird to have a da before it. And I think that is the reason why it changed into the na form. So, uh, speaking of plain forms, we can use for na adjectives, if it was shizuka, it would be shizuka nanode, shizuka nanoni. And if it's a noun, we can say inu nanode, inu nanoni, instead of inu danode, inu danoni. That would be incorrect. So there is an irregular form for the plain form. It's an adjective and the noun. Remember, the adjective, the noun, the plain form is da. But in this case, before node and noni, the na adjective uses a na and noun uses a na. Okay? So what's the difference between the two? So node is used to say something is this way, therefore something is this way. Noni is more like in spite of. So cause, in spite of the cause, the effect is this way. So it would be the opposite. So while node uses a very much a streamline, since this is this way, then this is going to be the way, cause and then an effect. The noni uses in spite of the cause, this is what happened. So let's take a look at my first example. Okay. So, リンゴ美味しいです。私はリンゴが好きです。So the cause is that the ringo is tasty. My effect is that I like apples. So if you were to look at these two sentences, you're most likely going to say it's because it's tasty that I like it. So in that case, it would be リンゴは美味しいので私はリンゴが好きです。Now, this is where it becomes a little tricky. So, if the second part, the effect, is the speaker's own thoughts, you may not use node. So take a look at the second one. 私はリンゴが好きです. That's very much definitely the speaker's own thoughts. So, in that way, in that case, you must use kara. So in that case, it would be リンゴは美味しいから私はリンゴが好きです。リンゴ美味しいから私はリンゴが好きです。Tricky, I know. I needed to add that for you. So let's look at the second example I gave you. 昨日たくさん勉強をしました。漢字の試験が優しいでした。So, I studied a lot yesterday. The kanji shiken is easy. Would it be using node or noni? Is it because yesterday I studied a lot that today's test is easy? Or is it in spite of studying a lot yesterday that the test is easy? Most likely it's going to be node. And in this case, unless I say that I thought the kanji shiken was easy, it's not a thought, a personal opinion. So therefore, we're going to say 昨日たくさん勉強をしたので、漢字の試験が優しいでした. So again, change it into the plain form, node, and then the end. This third example I have is 本が長いでした。読みやすいでした. So the book is long, and then it was easy to read. Is it because of the book is long that it was easy, or is it in spite of the book being long that it was easy to read? Most likely it's going to be Noni. So 本が長かったのに読みやすいでした. Because remember, 長いでした plain form is 長かった. いでした is かった. So 本が長かったのに読みやすいでした. In spite of the book being long, it was really easy to read. All right, so the next notes has to do with personal emphasis. I think this book is walking you through a little bit more of giving your own opinions. So this one has to do with an emphasis on your personal opinion. So we usually just say, for example, 私は座ります。私は走ります. Now, if I were to use that and I want to do the ending to des, it's still formal because I'm going to use des, not a decimas. Remember, is a plain form. I'm not plain form, is a formal form. So if I use 今日私は走るのです or 走るんです. You'll hear this a lot in more of a speech conversation. When someone is speaking about themselves, or even speaking about someone else, but they are basically inserting their own personal thoughts on something. So if I were to say, 私は今日走るんです. I'm going to run today. And it means exactly the same thing as if I were to say, 今日私は走ります. 走るんです, 走ります means the same thing, except that it gives a little bit more of a personal emphasis, saying, like, I'm the one who's going to run today. Not that I'm going to run today versus I'm the one who's going to be running today, or I'm going to be doing that thing called running today. So there is a sort of a personal emphasis when you use the plain form no des or plain form des. Now, the next one we have narimasu. So narimasu you learned in Nihongo ni means to become something. Now, if you use it with the te natte kimashita versus natte ikimashita, you'll notice that te form is a conjunction. Remember, you're connecting two verbs together. So natte means to become, kita means coming versus natte iku means to become and then going. So you can kind of guess where we're going with us. So I have a timeline here, the past, and then the point in time would be where you exist today. So something that has been happening, so becoming something in looking into the future, you're going to use natte ikimasu. Now, if it has already begun in the past and it continues to become, then you use natte kimashita. And it's a weird little thing. So let me give you some examples. I think it'll help you. So you would usually do some kind of adverb, fukushi, plus natte ikimasu. You would usually use a fukushi and adverb natte ikimasu for this explanation. So, for example, 勉強をすれば, if I study a lot, right? 勉強をたくさんすれば, 漢字が上手になっていきますよ. You will get better at kanji. You will get very good at kanji. 上手になっていきますよ. So, 勉強をすれば漢字が上手になっていきますよ. Meaning, if you study, your skills in kanji will get better. Versus fukushi natte kimashita, something that had happened in the past and continues to happen. So take a look at this sentence. 5歳になったので, by the way, that's a different way of writing the kanji for sai. This is usually, you'll see this more often when people are talking about their age. But anyway, 5歳になったので, again, we just did know that. So because I became 5 years old, or because he is 5 years old, or became 5 years old. So 5歳になったので、背が高くなってきました。He is becoming taller. Now, in this case, like the growth of someone does not immediately start at the age of 5. It's something that is continually happening, and he is becoming taller, but doesn't mean that it suddenly starts at this point in time. So you would use natte kimashita. Versus the first one, the previous one that I just talked about, that would be, here's the point in time. If you start studying at this point in time, and then in the future, you'll become better at writing kanji. So there's a little bit of a difference, something that has happened in the past and will continue to become something, you're going to use tekimashita. And if it's something here in this point in time, if you do something, it will become something, then obviously you use the natte-ikimasu. So, third example I have for you. 毎日たくさん食べすぎて太ってきました。So, every day I eat too much and I am becoming fat. So that's obviously something that has happened in the past, right? Mainichi means that it's been happening for very much every day for a while. So it's going to be futotte kimashita, something that has from the past and will continue to get better. So there's that. 運動をたくさんしているので痩せていくでしょう. In this case, I am like undo, I'm exercising a lot, and therefore 痩せていくでしょう, meaning that from this point on I should start getting skinnier. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky, but just so you know that there is a difference between natte kimashita versus natte ikimasu. And then finally, this is pretty much a review because you remember hoga, remember no hoga and yori. You use the plain form hoga when you do comparisons. And you know that yoides means good. So hogai means it's better if you, right? Better. Again, comparison, better if you. And usually you're giving advice when you use hogai. Usually use it with the ta form and the nai form. So because you're giving advice, yes, sometimes it's from past experience that you are giving advice. And the plain form, ta form, okay? So let me give you some examples. 来週の試験。来週の試験のために、remember, it means for something or an event for something. 来週の試験のために。So, 来週の試験のために勉強をした方がいいですよ。文法の勉強をした方がいいでしょ。来週の試験のために、新しい鉛筆を買った方がいいですよ。You should buy new pencils for next week's test because that might help you. How about 友達の誕生日パーティー。友達の誕生日パーティーのために、友達の誕生日パーティーのためにプレゼントを買っておいた方がいいですよ。You should go and buy some presents for your friend. それと、友達の誕生日パーティーのために、他の友達と話した方がいいですよ。You should talk to your other friends as well. How about next one? 健康のために。or 元気になるために。健康 would be health, in order to become healthy. So 健康のために運動をした方がいいですよ。健康のために野菜を食べた方がいいですよ。Again, ta form, 方がいいですよ。Of course, when you're giving advice, sometimes you want to use a nai form as well. So, for example, 健康のために飴とかお菓子をたくさん食べない方がいいですよ。You shouldn't eat a lot of that. or 健康のために let's see. 寝すぎない方がいいですよ。You shouldn't sleep too much. Or, 健康のために、コンピューターで、遊びすぎない方がいいですよ。You shouldn't excessively play too much on the computer.